So, can anyone tell me who or what are the Caucasians? Who are the people considered between the two continents, two seas, and two realms? Have y'all ever wondered where the greats of the UFC, such as Khabib Nurmagomedov, Khamzat Chimaev, and Islam Makhachev come from? Well, then stay tuned and give me some more watch time, baby! I need to get monetized. Who or what are Caucasians? So, when people, specifically white people or Euro-Americans, say the word Caucasian as if they're referring to West Eurasians, populations that include Europeans, Middle Easterners, South Asians to an extent, but such usage is quite misleading. A more appropriate usage is using it for the people of the Caucasus. The Caucasus Mountains are, well, a mountain range between Asia and Europe. Very, 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 very beautiful place if I do say so myself. By the way, on this episode we'll only be covering the Northeast Caucasian family. We'll cover Kartvelians, Circassians, Armenians, and Turkic groups of the Caucasus another time. The people of the Caucasus. The Caucasus Mountains are home to numerous people groups spread across their vast range. Today we'll be only talking about those inhabiting the northeastern Caucasus. So in this map we got a lot of nations. Fortunately for me, and not for you guys however, I'm just going to be explaining the ethno-linguistic makeup of the general families, not every specific nation. I don't got time for that. I'm a productive guy like you bitches, so yeah. Here's what the Northeast Caucasian family is divided up to. Nakhs being the Chechens, Ingushes, and Batkids. We're first going to do a cultural analysis on the Nakh peoples. So the Nakhs are the yellowest color thing inhabiting primarily Ingushetia and Chechnya. The word Nakh is derived from the Chechen word Vaynakh, which means our people. The Ingushes and Chechens are the Nakh people, so are the endangered bats. They share similar languages and cultures with each other. The Chechens. Since Chechnya has been the intersection of where a bunch of empires scrambled up, like vasectomy, it's reflected in Chechen mythology and culture, folk art, and etc., that has gotten inspiration from empires of Europe, Asia, and the Mediterranean. Fortunately, however, Imam Shamil created a new policy where he saw democratic popular culture as a threat to his rule. Folk dances and some other cultural shit was banned, but Imam Shamil was pretty basic though, no cap. He has legit the best groomed beard I've ever seen in my life. Maybe it's his genetics. Well, we may discuss this whole thing someday. Anyways, back to the video. Chechen culture, despite being banned for a few decades, was still preserved by the masses, passing down their traditions and customs from generation to generation. Shelter and food for guests is a must in Chechen culture. If a traveler wants to find a place to sleep or eat, might as well just visit someone's house in Chechnya. You'll find something anyways. And as Chechnya is a based and sexist country, women cannot show themselves to the guests. And the younger people serve the guests too, which is cool too. Family shit matters in Chechnya. The black pill, nor red pill, or blue pill wouldn't have existed if it weren't for collective communities, which is why Chechnya is based. We might discuss this topic some other time though, so stay tuned kiddos. Chechens spank their children a lot for doing bad habits like smoking and ciggies. The Nakh kiddies claim that in their in their oral traditions say that their ancestors came from beyond the mountains. When we reach our genetics section, we'll attest whether this is true or not, so keep that in mind. Kari Chokayev, some academic who study the Caucasus people, claims that the idea of Nakh peoples in general being an ethnically pure nation is just a bunch of erroneous baloney. The Georgians are the inbred ones. Anyway, time to move on to the next section. I'm running out of relevant things to talk about. Oh wait, I'll talk about the relationship between Chechens and Ingushes. Ingushetia is the tiniest republic of the Russian Federation. Knowing that makes me secure about my penis size. The Scottish Geographical Magazine of 1901, I know, very stupid name, claims that the Ingushes are very ancient inhabitants of the Caucasus, though their origins are unknown because the people forgot to preserve it and shit. Their historical traditions are all contradictory and obscure, so yeah. Or maybe I'm just being lazy to do some actual research. Okay, I'll have to do some more research then. I hate my job. The Chechens and Ingush are very similar in terms of culture and linguistics due to their shared origin. According to the same source, according to Georgian tradition, the Vainakh/Nakhs were the most Caucasian-like nation among all the Caucasus. Here's some more sources showing why the Ingush and Chechens recently separated into two different nations. The Nakhs are pretty chat too. They resisted slavery a lot. So the Lesgic people who I beat up 2 times in the ring, will tell the story someday. Anyway, the Lesgic peoples are so far the most diverse ethnicity of the Caucasus in terms of linguistics, culture, religion, and genetics. They're divided into several groups such as the Lazgins, Tsakur, Tabasaranis, Udis, etc. So the Lesgic peoples are divided into 2 groups, which further divide into more groups like bacterias and cum cells. Archies are kind of irrelevant because there's like 12 in Russia in total, so not really something worth discussing. Not because I'm dissing the nation, but rather I can't find much information on them at all in Russian or English sources. Also, how does it even make sense for the total population being 5,000, but the quote-unquote regions with significant populations being 12? Okay, I guess. We'll be talking about the more relevant Sam or subdivision. Let's start with the Udis. These people are like the direct descendants of the Caucasian Albanians. The Azerbaijani region of Oghuz and Nij, a village replacing Gabla, I don't fucking remember even, is where the majority of Udis live. Despite the other Lesgic kiddos being Muslim, the Udis still retain to their Christian roots. These mofos have 2 dialects, Nij and Vartashan/Oghuz. The dialects divided up because of the geography. The Vartashan dialect has 2 subcategories that we fortunately won't be talking about in this video, or probably ever. The Vartashan dialect and the Akhtenberi, the Lezgins. These kids are basically also descendant of Caucasian Albania, however, they're a mixture of several different Albanian tribes. Keep that in mind, unlike the pure virgin Udis. Now, religiously, alhamdulillah, the Lezgins are strict in their religion and they're Sunni Muslims, part of the Shafi'i school of thought. By the way, these kiddos did have a kingdom other than Caucasian Albania at some point too. They have unwritten code of honors too, which is why I respect Lezgins. In summary, kids, they're pretty cool. They got cool dances too. Tabasaranis. Tabasaranis are also a Sunni Muslim Lesgic group who live in the southern Dagestani okrugs, or as we base people call them, provinces. And again, these kids also descend from Caucasian Albania. So in general, the Tabasaranis and Lezgins, due to their shared origins and same Islamic faith, there's not much of a difference in culture between them. Though their languages are related, they're still distinct. This is from the Russian Wikipedia, by the way. The Avars and Tsez people. The Tsez people can be called dildo. I mean dido as well. Let's first discuss the Avar kiddos. By the way, don't confuse the Avars of the Caucasus and the Avars of Eurasia. They're 2 distinct separate groups that are not related to each other. Let's just get this out of the way. Imam Shamil was of Avar origin, which just makes this so much more based. The Avars are also called Maharuls, which means mountaineers. Like the other Caucasus groups, they primarily reside in Dagestan. The social system of the Avar people was based on a rural community consisting of blood-related associations. Endogamy is widespread among Avars. They rarely marry outside their tribe or clans. Oh my god. I'm so tired of mentioning the Caucasian Albanians. Anyway, the Caucasian Albanian tribes, Legs, Gels, Gargarians, I can't pronounce that, Silves, Andex, Tidurs. Yes, I know, very strange names, but specifically the Legs and Gels, and Iranic nations such as Sakas, Cadusi, and Masagete. Avars all seem to descend from them, however, there is no proof for this, as the scientific literature is filled with a bunch of unproven hypotheses, so don't take any of it seriously. Like, there's no lexical connection between these languages with Avar. Me and the person's idea behind there being a connection, Patachov, or Patachov, can't pronounce that shit, just wasted your time. LOL.
On a more serious note, the Kartvelian Orthodox Christian kingdom of Sarir, running from the 6th to 12th century, they introduced Christianity into the Avar Valley. Scratch that, because Subutai, one of the generals of the Mongol Empire, invades the kingdoms and conquers it. The credit also belonged to one of the generals, Jebe, as well. This resulted into the existence of the Avar Khanate. The Golden Horde overran the region in 1241, but by the 14th century, the newly established Avar Khanate managed to maintain independence from the Mongols. That's why Avars are quite Chad, man. In the 15th century, the Golden Horde declined, and the Kumyk state, the Shamkhalate of Qazi-Qumukh, rose to power. The Shamkhalate absorbed the Avar Khanate. Alright, it's time for the next part of this section, the Tsez people. The Tsez, or Dildo, Dido, are related to the Avars by language. The funny word Dido actually comes from the Georgian language. The cultural development of Didos follows the general characteristics of Dagestani culture. The only cultural element that differentiates them from the other Ando-Dido ethnic groups is the language. All other components vary and only in details. However, the Kartvelian and Kakhetian, man, I can't pronounce these names, Kakhetian influences on the culture of the Didos are stronger than those of any Dagestani ethnic group. So researchers and academics have always disputed the origins of the Dido Tsez people. There were some explanations in the 1960s and 1970s on the ethnic diversity of Dagestan. However, the plot didn't fit the Ando-Dido people. At least for now. Yes, I am implying that me and my team are going to do big plans in the future. So if you want to know what these projects are, then stay tuned. History. The territory of the Dido was, for the most part, ruled by Avar, or the people who ruled the Sarir kingdom at the time. Basically, they had rule over them. First records of an independent Dido political unit, a free community that nominally depended on the Avar Khanate, date from the 15th century. Alright, so we're done with the Avar Tsez people. Time for the Lak Dargan peoples. We'll now talk about the final entry of the introduction. The Dargan people of Dagestan are the second largest linguistic group of Dagestan. However, more than any other group of Dagestan, the Dargan people are really not just one group, but rather a collection of closely related, distinct language circles in south-central Dagestan, which collectively is known as Dargan or Dargwa. By the 9th century, in connection with the events of the 6th to 7th century, includes the first testimonies of Arab authors about Kaitag and Zidichgeram, Kubachi basically. The first mention of the ethnonym Dargans is the 15th century. In the 14th century, Islam was established among the Dargan peoples. By the beginning of the 19th century, the Kaitag Utsimiat, which was a multi-ethnic feudal political entity in the North Caucasus, after Dagestan became part of the Russian Empire in 1813. The Dargans took part in the liberation struggle of the highlanders of Dagestan and Chechnya under the leadership of Imam Shamil in 1834 to 59, actively participating in anti-colonial uprising of 1877. Since 1921, the Dargans were members of the Dagestani ASSR. Later, since 1991, the Republic of Dagestan forms in the Russian Federation. The Laks. Qumukh historically was a fortress city where the residence of the rulers of the Lak people was. Qumukh was the ancient capital of Lakia. The history of the Laks can be divided into several parts. The first part of the era of Anushirwan, who appointed a ruler called Qumukh. In the 6th century, Qumukh was one of the political centers in the highlands of Dagestan. This is where they lived too. I know your attention spans don't really give a shit anymore about the history, so yeah. Now at last, my children, we've reached the part where you've all been waiting for. Finally, in 2023, the genetic... Alright, so we're finally gonna start the genetics. We've reached the most important part of the video, the genetic aspect. And I'll just say one thing, this is unscripted. I'm going freestyle on this, but I have to say one thing, this is the second recording I've made The reason for that being is I was chewing gum, and when I was listening to the video I made, it sounded like... So that doesn't sound quite appealing, doesn't it? Alright, let's start with this already. Hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna cough a lot, so bear with me. Oh God. Okay. I was sick recently, so that's why. So let's start with a haplogroup analysis. I hope you guys already know what are haplogroups. So haplogroups is like your paternal and maternal ancestry. Like, it's basically summarized. You can get an idea of how it works with this chart. Like your father's fathers. It's like your genetic last name. It's like your genetic surname. Anyways, in the Northeast Caucasus, there seems to be a divide between the lineages of J1 and J2 in regards of frequencies with Dagestanis, excluding local Chechens, belonging to primarily J1, while Chechnya and Ingushetia, or the Nakh peoples, belong to primarily haplogroup J2. Damn, I do not see a dot. So we see there's already a difference. Like, there's already a difference between the Ando-Didoic people, Avars, well, they're the same people, well, the Avars, Lazgins, and Lakh-Dargan peoples, general Dagestani peoples, with the Nakhs. That says a lot. Just from their paternal frequency, the men differ genetically from these people. By a lot. And that's interesting. Haplogroups R1a and R1b, the spread of which is associated with the movement of Indo-European speakers, can be found to a remarkable extent among the Avars, the Dargins, and the Lezgins, while being minimal among other groups. So, what is interesting here? The Nakhs, they don't have Indo-European haplogroups. Now, R1a and R1b are haplogroups that originated in the Eurasian steppe. And the Eurasian steppe is home to Indo-Europeans. These are Indo-European haplogroups, for the most part. So, what is evident, we can understand from this graph, like, look at this. Look at this shit. Look at this. You see J1, this is J1, this is J2. And these are like the subclades, M81, M89, M34, M2767. Oh God. Anyways, what we can understand from this, is that what we understand from this is that the Indo-Europeans have genetically affected the other Dagestani groups, but not the Nakhs. That is very interesting. If we go further into the autosomal DNA, the admixture analysis, there's an obvious differentiation between the Chechens, Ingushes, or Nakhs in general with the Dagestanis. It's evident from the Western steppe herders. And these people are the Proto-Indo-Europeans of the forest steppe, not Pontic steppe, forest steppe. And the Caucasus hunter-gatherer ancestry. The Chechens, they have significantly more Caucasus hunter-gatherer ancestry. The Nakhs, in general, they have much more Caucasus hunter-gatherer ancestry and much less Indo-European input than the Dagestani counterparts. This is said for their Y DNA, and this is said for their admixture analysis. So let's show this here. Let's focus on like the main aspects. Like the stuff that is minimal, it's going to be minimal through and through. It's going to be minimal everywhere. The stuff that's like somewhat high, it's somewhat high, like in general. But focus on the two things here. Like this is the admixture of everybody. My friend made this. By the way, it's been authored by Dwaz Siwas, copyrighted. So yeah, the credit all belongs to my best friend, Dwaz. Belongs to him. Anyways, God, I'm out of breath. Anyways, the Caucasus in the Avars is minimal compared to the Chechens. It's minimal. It's minimal. However, the Western steppe herder, it's much higher. Like, it's much higher when we compare this. Like, the median is much higher. And then look at the Dargans. Look at the difference of color and numbers. Like, just look at that. You can get an idea. Like, look at the difference. This just shows the genetic separation between these nations. And Englishes. Now look, the pattern changed. Caucasus went up. The Caucasus went up, while the Indo-European steppe, it went down. But it's doing the opposite now. When we come to the Laks. And look at the Lezgins. I have no words. This explains literally everything, honestly. Tabasaranis, same thing. Look at the less amount. Udis are an interesting case. Interesting case, for sure. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting case. They did not... We'll show you later that this is interesting. But the Udis are quite interesting since Udis did not fall into the clusters. We'll show the PCA later. Let me give the other brief analysis on the other stuff. Anatolian Neolithic, generally, it's normal amount. It's around 15 to 30% in general in these peoples. And Zagros Neolithic, yeah, highest amount, not really going above 16. Oh, wait, there's an 18% one. Never mind. 22%. All right. And Northeast Asia, Levant, these places, they're not really significant. They're not significant in the genetic makeup of the Caucasus. They're not significant at all. It doesn't really go above 10%. So we're not going to really care much about this. Like, these aspects are not very important as the rest. Anyways, here is the genetic distances. Now let me explain what this is. This is just showing how close, what nations are closest to the genetic makeup. Whose genetic makeup is closest to said nation. That's what the distances are to. So we see here, yes, this might not correspond with the linguistics. Like, Avars are related to closest to Dargins in terms of genetic makeup. But your language doesn't define your genetics regardless. So yeah, that's the point. Now, here's all the summarizations. Here's it all. You can take a pause and look at the stuff you want. I'm just scrolling so you guys can all just get an idea, get the gist of it. Anyway, here's the PCA. I find the PCA very interesting because, like, look, it proves our point. The Chechens and Englishes, they have their own cluster, while the rest of the Dagestanis, they have their own separated cluster. It's like a separated cluster, and it's because of their Indo-European admixture. That's the thing that separates them. Like, look, and then, hold on. This is their Indo-European admixture, all of it. Here's another PCA. Here's another section of the PCA showing it all. We see that these people shift. There's a shift between the Chechens and Englishes and the Kura Araxes, which was a Bronze Age. It was a Bronze Age archaeological culture. It was a Bronze Age Caucasus archaeological culture. They shift to them. The Udis also do. They shift to them. While look at them. Look at these guys. They shift to these guys. The Yamnaya, the Rus Catacomb, Rus Kalmykia, Rus Caucasus, Srubnaya. These are steppe cultures. And what is interesting, what I find the most about this, like, ignore the first piece, like, if we ignore the other PCA, the second one, this one, look at the first one. Udis are a genetic outlier. They're the most distant nation of the Caucasus. Well, compared to the Northeast Caucasians. No, guys, who live in the Northeast Caucasus, however, are genetically and culturally different, and linguistically. We won't be talking about them for now. Udis are really distinct in terms of genetics, and I find that really interesting. Isn't that interesting? But we see the reason for this is that their Caucasus input is much higher compared to these guys. These guys still shift towards the Dagestanis, the Nakhs. The Nakhs do shift to them, but not to the extent as Udis do. Alright, so the Northeast Caucasian peoples are overall related. The proportions of Y DNA lineages among them are mainly native. They have native haplogroups. J literally originated in the Middle East. Or the Caucasus, if I'm not wrong. I'll have to double check that. Don't take my word for it. The significant amount of Western steppe herders among Dagestanis, in contrast to their indigenous Y DNA composition, might suggest that anything from bottlenecks, founder effects, to introduction. You see this thing? This is just a way of sugarcoating that the men weren't able to protect their women from getting raped by. The men couldn't protect their women getting raped by Indo-European men. Damn, that is sad. Anyways, thank you for all watching this video. I appreciate it. Loves and kisses. Goodbye.